Hello everyone and welcome to Edusurg Clinics. I am Dr. Gunjan Desai and today we are going to discuss a very important topic, the causes of gastric outlet obstruction as well as the electrolyte abnormalities which are commonly asked but not very clearly given in books, and then a look at the management of gastric outlet obstruction. So a very important topic, it is a clinico-pathological entity which can occur due to any disease or disorder in the pyloroenteric region. The stomach gets massively distended, which can be due to a mechanical or a non-mechanical impairment in gastric emptying function. Benign causes are seen in up to 37% of the cases. So when it comes to causes of gastric outlet obstruction, and please remember this flowchart for your life as well as for your exam, something that is not clearly given everywhere. But the causes, as we discussed, are mechanical and non-mechanical. The non-mechanical example of a cause of gastric outlet obstruction is diabetic gastroparesis. When it comes to mechanical causes, it can be benign as well as malignant. In malignancy, the most common cancer causing gastric outlet obstruction is pancreatic cancer. Other cancers are in that vicinity. So if you know the anatomy, we have a series on duodenum and stomach anatomy. So you can have a look at that. Ampullary carcinoma, duodenal cancer, bile duct cancer, and stomach cancer. So all of these can lead to mechanical blockage in the pyloroenteric region and lead to gastric outlet obstruction. When it comes to benign causes, it can be intraluminal, that is within the lumen, wall pathology at the gastric outlet, and extraluminal compression, usually by lymph nodes or pseudocysts, that is extraluminal. Lymph nodes, the most common causes seen are lymphoma, tuberculosis, and metastatic malignancies. Wall pathology can be due to peptic ulcer disease or pyloric stenosis, and Crohn's disease very rarely affects this area, but it is known as ram horn stomach. Intraluminal causes, it can be a duodenal web or a duodenal atresia, Bezos, gallstones causing gastric outlet obstruction, also known as Boveret syndrome, and gastric polyps. Okay, so all these are various causes that can lead to gastric outlet obstruction. Remember the classification, mechanical and non-mechanical, then benign and malignant causes in mechanical, and within the lumen, in the wall and outside the wall for benign causes. So the etiology, peptic ulcer disease is seen in 5% of all patients with gastric outlet obstruction. Most common cause is Helicobacter pylori. More common area of obstruction is at the first part of duodenum, then the pyloric channel ulcers. Acute obstruction usually is seen more commonly in first part of duodenum, and this is due to acute inflammation and edema, whereas chronic obstruction is more common in pylorus, and this is due to scarring and fibrosis. Leather bottle stomach or teapot stomach, commonly asked multiple choice question, is seen in gastric ulcer, whereas a trifoliate appearance is seen in duodenal ulcer. Like we discussed, the most common malignant cause is pancreatic head malignancy. When it comes to clinical features, the cardinal symptom is vomiting. The vomiting is of undigested food particles, often consumed 5 to 7 days back. There is relief of symptoms for 3 to 4 days after vomiting. This is a very important point in your history taking. Undigested food particles consumed 5 to 7 days back, non-bilious and projectile vomiting with relief of symptoms for 3 to 4 days, and then it will recur again. There can also be early satiety, bloating, or epigastric fullness, as is seen in malignancy, tuberculosis, or lymphoma. You can have anorexia, nausea, or weight loss in the patient, pain in epigastric region, but fullness is a more common symptom. When it comes to physical examination, there are features of chronic dehydration, malnutrition, distended abdomen. There is a tympanitic mass in epigastrium, left hypochondrium can extend up to left lumbar and umbilical region, visible gastric peristalsis, and when you auscultate, a succussion splash may be audible What is done here is after 4 hours of fasting, shaking the patient's abdomen after placing a stethoscope over the epigastric region, you can hear the fluid in the stomach moving, and that is basically the succussion splash. Oscarto percussion is also a test which is done to diagnose over distended stomach. Basically, what you do is you place a stethoscope over the epigastric region and then scratch the skin from anterior axillary line in the subcostal area, and from there you keep moving it medially and downwards, basically imagining the greater curvature of the stomach. Usually this lies above the umbilicus, but in gastric outlet obstruction, this may be below the umbilicus. So that is ausculto percussion. Coming to Goldstein Saline Load Test, another bedside test to diagnose gastric outlet obstruction, basically by looking at the gastric emptying capacity. Very commonly asked in exams, the name is Goldstein Saline Load Test. What you have to do is you have to insert a Ryle's tube or a nasogastric tube into the stomach. Now, before performing the test, the stomach must be completely decompressed. So the patient ideally should be fasting 2 to 4 hours. What you do is when you aspirate, if there is 200 to 300 ml or more in the aspirate in this state, then this suggests gastric outlet obstruction, but it is not diagnostic. So once you have emptied the stomach, instill 750 ml of normal saline into the stomach and then clamp the nasogastric tube for 30 minutes. After 30 minutes, when you aspirate the gastric contents, if 400 ml or more is aspirated, this is suggestive of gastric outlet obstruction. Less than 400 ml, the obstruction may be partial or no obstruction at all. So Goldstein saline load test, Oscarto percussion, succussion splash in auscultation, some of the classical signs that are asked in your exams. Now, one of the most important questions and concepts that we need to understand in gastric outlet obstruction is the electrolyte abnormality. And the flow chart is actually showing that, and this occurs in 3 steps. So we are going to see them one by one. The thing is, because of the blockage at the duodenum, the gastric acid accumulates in the stomach and vomiting leads to loss of hydrochloric acid. So as you can see here, there is loss of hydrochloric acid. So there is loss of hydrogen ion, which leads to metabolic alkalosis, and loss of chloride, which leads to hypochloremia. And loss of fluid. So basically there is extracellular volume depletion. So result is a hypochloremic metabolic alkalosis and dehydration, increased blood urea nitrogen and creatinine. So this is basically the picture that occurs because of loss of hydrochloric acid or gastric acid in the vomiting. Now what happens is this volume depletion activates the renin-angiotensin-aldosterone system. Increased aldosterone results in increased sodium reabsorption in distal nephron to fight the dehydration. However, when sodium is excreted, it is exchanged with potassium and hydrogen ions in the urine. So the kidneys will excrete potassium and hydrogen, and this results in an acidic urine, and that is why this is known as paradoxical aciduria, because ideally in metabolic alkalosis you need to preserve acid, but here the acid is getting excreted to increase volume and sodium. So kidneys excrete hypopotassium, so hypokalemia, and H plus, so acidic urine. So that is why this is known as paradoxical aciduria. So severe hypochloremia, kidneys attempt to retain chloride again in the distal nephron when sodium is reabsorbed. To maintain electroneutrality, potassium and hydrogen ions are secreted. So that is why this is paradoxical aciduria again. So two systems which result in this phenomenon. And finally, what you see is a hypokalemic, hyponatremic, hypochloremic, hypomagnesiamic, metabolic alkalosis with paradoxical aciduria. So that is what finally you will see in these cases. Because of metabolic alkalosis, there is reduction in circulating ionized calcium, and this can result in gastric tetany. Now coming to investigations, and this is one of our patients with gastric outlet obstruction. You can see the massively distended stomach. Blood investigation, CBC can be done, which will show anemia most common in these patients. Electrolytes and ABG is very important as we discussed in the previous slides. The metabolic abnormalities are actually the reason why gastric outlet obstruction is more a medical emergency. Creatinine and BU and albumin will help you in checking the dehydration as well as the nutritional status. ECG is very important because the electrolyte and metabolic abnormalities can result in cardiac changes. Then you can do an X-ray abdomen, which will show an increased size of stomach, air fluid level in the stomach. Upper GI gastrography or barium study, you may see an absence of duodenal cap, dilated stomach, and contrast does not pass into the duodenum. Then there is upper GI endoscopy, but the gold standard test for gastric outlet obstruction will be a CCT abdomen with oral or a nasogastric contrast and an IV contrast, of course, after completing the hydration of the patient and checking creatinine levels. So as I said, this is more of a medical emergency than a surgical emergency. First step is nasogastric decompression, nil by mouth, and fluid and electrolyte replacement. Half normal saline with 5% glucose at 150 to 175 ml per kilogram per day with potassium replacement at least in the first 24 hours to maintain a urine output of more than 1 ml per kilogram per hour. Sometimes the patient may need a percutaneous jejunostomy or a supplemental parenteral nutrition after electrolyte abnormality correction. We have a complete course on nutrition. If you have not seen, you can have a look. Once you have done this medical management, the investigations are carried out, CT scan, endoscopy as required. Once that is done, based on the diagnosis, we saw the flowchart of different causes of gastric outlet obstruction. So the surgical or endoscopic management will depend on correction of the underlying condition that is causing the gastric outlet obstruction. If the patient is very high risk for surgery, then now you have option of endoscopic balloon dilatation and stenting, or even an endoscopic gastrojejunostomy as a strategy for symptomatic relief. Thank you.